Thank you, thank you. That's probably the first time in a long time anybody's clapped for me, so I don't get it at home. So, listen, thank you and welcome to Montclair State. I know a lot of you haven't been here in a while, and you see it's an entirely different place, but enjoy it, and we want you to re-engage and be a part of what we do here. And with that in mind, I want to bring to the stage Jerry Applestein, who he runs our fundraising for the President's Club. He's going to kind of welcome the President's Club members, and we'll go from there. Jerry?
Thank you very much. For any of you who got a gushing thank you note, please clap your hands. I'm not an MSU graduate, but I'll tell you what, I wish I was. I went to MIT, and I grew up in a household, shared a bedroom with my brother with one bathroom, but gained an appreciation for the arts and for making a difference in this world. And I am so honored and privileged to be the inaugural chair of the President's Club. And one of the things that I felt that we could do an even better job was expressing appreciation to you, our most loyal and ardent donors. I mean, when you make a gift to this university, we are training and educating scholars from largely underrepresented populations. And if you believe in social justice and racial equality, the most important gift you can give is for them to get a diploma and go out into this world and make a difference. And many of these students elect not to continue their educations here, not because they don't have the scholarly capacity, because they might have a shortfall as little as $500 between what we can give them for financial aid and what they can come up with to continue their education. So there's a wonderful expression from the Talmud that says, he who saves one life saves the world entire. So if you make a donation to the President's Club and get into this club, you're not just saving one life, you're saving at least two. And that's why we wanted you to come to this campus. We want you to meet the leadership. We want you to feel even more a part of this vibrant, amazing community. Thank you so very much for supporting this magical place. And with that, let me get Greg back on stage to introduce the person I know you've been waiting to hear from.
Thank you, Jerry. I want to take a quick minute to recognize, I see a number of members of the foundation board that are here, and I thank you. Even my favorite past president of the foundation board, Paul Stalin, is here. So thank you for being here. And listen, the gentleman I'm about to introduce has only been with us a couple of months, but he has made himself really known and felt here at Montclair. He's a sincere architect of the future of this university, and I for one am glad to be a partner of his and working with him to try to make the positive things happen here that we know are going to happen. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I want to bring to the forefront Dr. Jonathan Capelle, who has left Arizona and come to the real mecca of education.
Exactly.
In Upper Montclair, New Jersey. So,
thank you. Thank you, Greg. And I appreciate two things, because first of all, I really do appreciate your partnership, and I think we're gonna do some big things together. So I'm excited that you framed it that way, and I also like the way you described me as an architect, because there was a time in my life when I was a kid and say, what do you want to be when you grow up? When architect was on my list of things that I was considering. And I very much do consider this to be an extension of being an architect. It's designing an institution that can do great things. And I really do feel fortunate to have landed at Montclair State University, because it's the right institution to do the kind of things that I think are important. So I want to have a conversation. I do want to have some back and forth. And so I hope we can have questions. And I'm saying that now, so that when I say, are there any questions that people have been thinking about, I don't want to drop that on you as a professor, as a surprise quiz. But Colleen says, no, you should talk. They're going to want to hear you. They're going to want to hear you talk. So I'll talk a little bit. I'm usually not shy about talking, but quite frankly, I've been talking a lot lately. I'm a little sick of the sound of my own voice. But let me just start by giving you a sense of why I'm in higher education, like why this is what I want to do. And I think you'll understand when I talk about why this is the right calling for me, and not being an architect in the traditional sense. I do remember I had one person who was an architect who said, kid, you think you're going to be Frank Lloyd Wright, but you're going to spend 20 years designing air ducts. But I don't think that guy was right, but that I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to be Frank Lloyd Wright. Anyway, so the story that I've been repeating, which is true, is that I grew up, by the way, yes, from but I'm getting over. Was an academic. She was a college professor and an administrator. Actually spent a biggest chunk of her career at Rampo College, not far from here. And so I was exposed to both of those worlds as a kid growing up. And my joke is that I'm not very original, so I just sort of took the average of my parents and got a PhD in political science. But the truth is that I was always interested in figuring out how to give something back. I saw what my father did. I saw that that he was focused on making a difference in the world. I was very influenced by my grandparents, who thought about the world and engaged me in discussions about politics and what was going on and why bad things were happening and how you could make a difference. And I also saw the difference that my mother was making by being a college professor, working with students. One of her students there just walked in the room. And so I thought a lot about universities from an early age, right, in a way that most people didn't. And I thought, wow, universities are amazingly powerful things. But the more I read about them, I thought, they could be so much more. Right? These incredible things, they're hundreds of years old, they're very resilient, they're very powerful, they bring together all kinds of different, smart, talented, motivated people. What if you harnessed that? And what if you thought about the university as being a tool to accomplish all those things that we want to do in the world, right? Address injustice, lift people up who are downtrodden, fix problems, right? Make the world a better place. I'll stick with Jerry's theme, a Tikkun Olam message. How do you heal the world? And I thought, universities could be incredibly powerful if you conceive of them that way. And so that's why I ended up in higher education. Yeah, I got a PhD. I write obscure academic things that very few people read. I like that, and I do love teaching. I love being with students. I love engaging people. I love getting people excited about ideas. But what really sort of ignited me was the idea of being an architect, a leading institution, and taking it in a direction that I think all universities, particularly public universities, ought to be headed in. And so I became passionate about a few different things, and I'll share with you sort of the things that excite me, and you'll understand exactly why I'm excited about Montclair State University. So first of all, I think that higher education has gone a fundamentally wrong direction in the sense that it's defined excellence by exclusivity, right? And that's so ironed into our consciousness that we don't even think it's weird anymore. Excuse me. We don't think it's weird that the first thing that a university wants to tell you is how many people they reject. Right, just think about that. Like, it's a pretty normal thing. Like, you say, oh, well, their acceptance rate was 5%. And we're like, oh, well, they must be pretty good. They only accepted 5%. That's bizarre. Like, that's just a super weird thing to tell you. Like, well, we must be good because we rejected most of the people who applied. And it's like, I guess, although it means that when those people are successful, you didn't have much to do with it because the main thing you did was throw people out when they applied. And by the way that they accomplished that is thus to get a bunch of people to apply for the purpose of rejecting them. which, by the way, that's a real thing. That actually, it's easy to do. If we wanted to be better in that sense, it would be super easy. We would just go, we'd send a bunch of mail out, we'd get a bunch of people to apply who we had no intention of accepting, so that our percentage of acceptances would go down. That's a real thing. Yeah, I'm not so interested in that. To me, the real measure would be that excellence is defined by how people realize their potential when they join you. Like, that's excellence. And how much of a difference you made in that person's life. And so I wanted to be at a university, and this is how I ended up at Arizona State University, because it shares the same DNA in many respects with Montclair State University. I wanted to be in a place that is open to a population that looks like the world we live in, right? Which is not the population at the places that define themselves by their exclusivity. And so open it up. Now, by the way, not anybody, people who are capable of doing college work, right? You don't want to put people in a position where they can't be successful. So it's not you just let anybody in the door, but anybody who can do college work, and then you say, I'm going to open the doors and then judge myself by how successful those students are. That to me is how you measure, that's how you measure greatness. And so it can't just be accessibility. It has to be accessibility with no compromise on excellence, right? That you have the exact same expectations and you judge yourself by the same standards. So that to me was a really powerful idea. And I must say, being part of ASU, which embraced that and seeing what that looks like in practice, and building the college that I led there, which was called the Watts College of Public Service and Community Solutions, where we had the most diverse population on campus, majority minority population, majority first generation, over 60% Pell eligible, and we also had the highest ranked programs. More than half of the top 10 programs at ASU were in the college that I led, the most diverse college, which I thought said it all. So that was really part, and Montclair State has exactly that potential, that exact possibility. And I'm so impressed as I've gotten to meet the alumni of this institution, including many in this room, who've done remarkable things. I don't think we crow about it enough, to be honest. I don't think we celebrate what people from this university have done enough. And quite frankly, it doesn't surprise me, because as I've said to folks who I've talked about this with, there's something about a student who goes to Montclair State University and other universities like it, I will allow for that. There's a willingness to work hard. There's a grittiness to it, and a sort of can-do attitude that gets you very far, even if you don't have quite the same networks of la-di-da alumni before you to help open doors. And that's very powerful. We need to celebrate that. We need to show that to our current students so they see where you are and they see how you and your colleagues have forged your own path. So that's part of what I'm excited about in terms of what it means to be a public serving university. The second part is, how do you take this institution and now turn it into an instrument to solve our most challenging problems by engaging the community, forging partnerships, and being a sort of source of collaboration that takes things forward. And I've seen both here and at other institutions what it means when you embrace the potential of a university as a problem-solving entity to advance on issues of health and economic development and education. I could have a long list. This is not a new concept for this university, right? This is, after all, Montclair State Normal School, right? And so we've been engaging schools since the origin of this institution, training teachers, partnering with school districts and individual schools, since this was a very different place than the university we're inhabiting today. And there are projects in every college at this university that do exactly this, right? That partner with local governments, nonprofits, community organizations. What we don't have is an infrastructure to support that, and a sort of framework, an architecture that makes the whole more than the sum of the parts. And so what I'm excited about building with colleagues here and with your support is an engine of solutions for the community, right? That's what this university ought to be, a place where people's aspirations can get translated into reality. And as I said, I don't think necessarily people realize that universities are capable of delivering on that vision, but I've seen it, not only in my own experience, but in other universities. We had this habit at my old university of acting like we were the only ones in the universe who did anything. It's not a good habit. It's not a good habit because you miss out on the opportunity to see all the good stuff that's happening in other places. And so we have the opportunity to do some spectacular things here. Now, I have some specific things that we'll get into. I'm a big believer in public service, in creating opportunities for people to grow and learn themselves by getting hands-on learning opportunities through public service. I think that's something that's going to be fundamental to this university. And quite frankly, it's important for another reason, and I'll sort of begin the conclusion by mentioning this. I don't think Montclair State University is recognized appropriately. So I think you know the vice president was here yesterday. That's a nice thing. It was brief, but a lot of work, and our team did an incredible job managing the logistics of a vice presidential visit, which is, as you would imagine, quite complex. You know what the best part was about that visit, from my point of view, is not that Kamala Harris was here. That's nice. It's that a whole bunch of people saw Montclair State University in the news, and now they know there's a thing called Montclair State University. Yes. And some number of them clicked on it, and they read a little bit about Montclair State University, and they're like, huh, I had no idea, right? And that's what we need to change, right? We need to change the appreciation and the understanding of what has been accomplished here and what will be accomplished here. And I think a lot of you have said to me this morning, and it's the line that I've heard from many returning alumni, even in the few short weeks that I've been around. They're like, boy, this place is so different than the Montclair State that I went to. So two things about that. One, I think that I really love is that in a lot of institutions, when you hear that, people are like, this is so different than the school I went to. It's not a happy statement. With maybe one or two exceptions. I did get one email from a person who was really upset that the business school is where his tennis courts used to be. But for the most part, when people say this is not the school that I went to, they're glowing, right? People are excited. They're like, this place is evolving and it's changing and it's not the school I went to, and I want to be part of the new version of it, and I want to see what comes next. That's awesome, right? I really like that. And the second thing I want to say about that is we're not done yet. We're not done yet. I've been reading the history of the university. There's a history book that we're gonna figure out how to republish because it's quite good, and we're gonna update it. And what's cool is that if you look back at presidencies and people starting their presidencies, the book is sort of organized around presidencies, which it sort of makes sense. Each time is a chapter, and a lot of the successive presidencies, starting in 1908, has said, here's where we're going to go, building on where we've been before, and it's an exciting next chapter, and the institution is going to continue to grow. And that's what Susan Cole said when she began. That's what President Reed said when he began. Right back the history of the university. And I think this is an incredible moment for us. And when I spoke to the faculty and staff on the opening day, I think you have to address it, right? We are taking on this project here at our university at an interesting is one word, at an interesting moment in our nation's history, right? I think a lot of us are concerned about where we are as a country, where we are as a democracy, where we are as a population on a planet that is in jeopardy. I mean, I think we are rightfully wondering what comes next. And we see things that we don't like. And the message that I delivered then was building on this phrase that's usually attributed to Cicero of, I criticize by what I create. It's a great line. I liked it the minute I read it, which is, don't just talk. Don't just tell people what they're doing wrong. Show people how to do it right. Criticize by what you create. And so I think we can criticize by what we create here at Montclair State University. We can build an inclusive and diverse community where we show how to behave respectfully and embrace our differences, and we don't think that that means we're all going to love each other and hug every minute. We're going to have disagreements, but we're able to do that and still remain a community. We can do that here. We're going to criticize the idea that exclusivity is the only path to excellence. We're going to show that you can be inclusive and be excellent at the same time. We're going to criticize the idea that in dark times, when we're concerned about the world that we live in, that the best solution is to build walls, to take care of ourselves, to take care of our own, and not worry about anybody else. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to take all this great stuff that we have on this beautiful green campus, and we're going to embrace our surrounding communities. And some of you have heard me talk about, I think, the opportunities that we have, not just in communities where we've traditionally been, Newark, the Oranges, but we're going to expand on what we've done in places like Patterson. We're going to embrace our neighbors in Clifton and Little Falls and Montclair, and we're going to do more together. And we're not going to build an ivory fortress. We're going to be out, and we're going to show that we can thrive while helping others thrive as well. And we're going to criticize by creating a place where people want to invest. And yes, that is part of what this is about. Where people want to invest because they say, you know, I can help this institution. I can make a difference in the world, to take Jerry's way of putting it, by helping to make this institution thrive. And we're going to show that people are not only self-interested, that they want to give of themselves if they believe that the money and the resources will be put to good use. And let me close by talking last thing about how important I think your participation is. Universities obviously have shifted a lot over the years. There was a time when public universities were envisioned as being public because the vast majority of their resources came from the state. I think I'm not letting you on a secret when I tell you that's not the way this university works anymore. We could have a discussion about whether tax dollars should be funding universities, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it doesn't really matter. That's not what it is. And so you do require investment from private individuals to make it work. And so alumni donations, and quite frankly, non-alumni donations are the key. And I've seen, you know, I come from a university where, quite frankly, the alumni giving wasn't what you'd want it to be, but it was the activation of non-alumni who said, this is an institution that's doing what I want. That was really important. But it's not just financial resources. If we're going to connect with the community, we need your help and your fellow alumni help in connecting with local organizations, in building the pathways for our students to get jobs, to get internships, to build the network that other older institutions have for their graduates. We need your assistance in forging relationships, in building a network of support. And so I appreciate that you're all here this weekend. Yes, it's a homecoming, and we're going to try and turn this into a much bigger event than it's been. I'm very excited about what Colleen's advancing, and I hope everybody appreciates Colleen Capelle, who's our Director of Development. Has done a fantastic job, and we're enjoying working together. We're going to build this up, and we want your partnership in making this feel like your home. But we want it to be a relationship that's 365 days a year, and excited to have your partnership in this great next chapter of Montclair State University. So thank you so much for your enthusiasm. I do want to have a conversation, so I'll open it up to questions. Thank you so much. Yeah, where is that?
President John, that was so affirming and wonderful. You are a visionary, and we in this room are all visionaries. We know where we are, and with all of the people in here, we intend to help you find out where we want to go.
Thank you.
In the Old Testament, as Moses' arms got weary, Aaron was there to help us, to help Moses' arms stay up. Aaron means helper of God. So all the people in here will be your Aaron. And my name is Donna Dangler. I'm a middle school choir teacher, and there is a special place in heaven for middle school teachers.
That's because you had a special place in hell while you were working, I guess.
Well, the only other thing I wanted to say to you, sir, is that Einstein is known to have said, creativity is intelligence having fun. Mm-hmm. So what is your concept for the university as we go forward for creativity?
Great, I appreciate that. So I'm a little, by the way, I'm not sure if I'm God or Moses in that analogy. Either way, I'm not entirely comfortable with it, mostly because you can only disappoint if that's the starting point. I think that oftentimes when that question is framed about creativity, that it's a sort of way of asking about the arts at the university, which I'm very excited about. We were talking, Donna, about the music school, which I had the opportunity to meet with the director yesterday, and it's a fantastic program, and I think is a source of strength, and as I think many people know, of the Cali School is outstanding, and our theater and arts programs are amazing, and so that's obviously a point of pride and something that we're going to develop and build on, and I think that there's an opportunity in some sense to use that as the tip of the spear to enlighten the world about the excellence of Montclair State University. But I want to take it in a slightly different direction, which is to say, I don't think that creativity is only about the arts in the typical sense. I actually think universities do a disservice if you think that's the creative part of the university. Creativity is in every field. I use a slightly different word, but it's obviously related. I think about imagination, and that the imagination is the quintessentially defining attribute of human beings. It's what makes us different. Our ability to imagine something that isn't, and how do we use all of our other talents to make real that which we imagine. We don't have any evidence that other creatures that inhabit this planet are capable of doing that. And of course, that ability is an essential part of the creative industries that we're talking about. Imagining a sonata, or imagining a play, or imagining a painting, and then bringing it into being. But that ability to harness your imagination and turn it into something is actually the root of every endeavor. Whether it's imagining as a biologist that there's some order that explains why we are what we are, and Watson and Crick take that imagination and turn that into the discovery of DNA, or it's the imagination of an entrepreneur who says people would value something that doesn't exist. I'm going to create that which they don't even know, as Steve Jobs says, right? They don't even know that they need it, and I'm going to create that out of nothing, and I'm going to sell that, and I'm going to build a business, and I'm going to employ millions of people. That requires an imagination and a training and a creativity. Public policy, I mean, we could go field by field, and so when I spoke to the students that same day, that was the theme that I emphasized with them, which is that coming to a university is about embracing your imagination and training it and disciplining it. And part of what our opportunity to do is to harness the power of thousands of people's imagination. And that's what I want this university to be. And so my hope is that our excellence in creativity and our embrace of creativity is not only for the artists, but it's for every person on this campus, and that becomes a defining characteristic of the Montclair education and of the Montclair graduate. Yeah. Thank you. Very shy. Yeah, you can.
Exclusivity. Can you hear me? Uh, that rings loud in my ear. I mean, I've been around for a while. I've been through Dr. Dixon, Dr. Reed, and President Cole. But it's something about your message that rings loud and clear.
Thank you.
And that I would like to partner with you. I know you don't classify yourself as an architect, but if you need a laborer, I'm in.
Hi, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
My name is Dan Sherwood. I'm a graduate of 2014 College of Humanities and Social Sciences and 2019 College of Ed. I wanted to start by thanking Colleen and Jean's team for putting together today's planning. I was wondering, what can you share with us about upcoming campus construction and how you're prioritizing that type of facilities planning?
Yeah, so I can't whip out the plan of what's next. I will say I'm meeting with every college, every school. You know, haven't gotten through the whole university yet, and pretty much everyone that I go to wants to know when they're going to get their building. And so the good news is that the vast majority of people will be disappointed. But look, I think that there's been a remarkable sort of building boom at this university over the last 15 years, and that's part of what makes the place so different than the Montclair you're at, which makes it all the more impressive that in many ways we're still too big for our footprint, and so. That's sort of interesting. I think there are a lot of needs that have come up. We have obviously thousands more students than we had years ago, but we have the same student center. So that's obviously an area of need that's been identified that I heard about, and so that's clearly an issue that we're going to deal with. We have a growing scientific enterprise with incredible research that's being done and an incredible record that shows that when Montclair faculty and researchers apply for externally funded grants, they win. But we don't have literally the space to house some of the very grants that we're winning, and so that's clearly a need. We have fantastic artistic programs that are in older facilities that can accommodate the programs and that aren't accessible to, if you're going to be inclusive, to think about inclusivity is also about people with different abilities and different physical constraints, and we're not responsive to those things, to be frank. So we have to deal with that as well. The other part of this is a big complex organism, right? So we have a police department that's in a building that's dated and too small, and so we have an opportunity to build a public safety center that I think will redefine what it means to do public safety on a university campus, and how do we build a really affirmative relationship between our security team and the campus community. I think that's exciting, but it's an investment and it's a thing. So we have a lot of needs, we have a lot of opportunities. I think that what you have to do when you approach these things, and this university has done this, right? So this is not new, but is apply the same creativity to how you do those things in terms of partnerships with external entities, in terms of the mechanisms by which you finance those facilities. You have to have the exact same approach in the physical infrastructure as well. I will say that the one part that I think we're all, and this is a university thing, it's a private sector thing that we're all grappling with, which is we're doing this planning at a spectacularly difficult moment because we have no idea how we're going to use space in the years ahead. So I can tell you that the most, and I'm sure many of you are facing this in your own workplaces, the most important topic for employees at this university is remote work. Okay, so how many square feet of office space do you need when we all know that, we don't know the exact specifics of it, but we know people are going to be working substantially off campus in the years ahead. And as I've said, like, okay, but you realize that means you're not going to have your own office for the 2 days a week you're here, right? You'd understand that those two things don't go together, and people are like, oh, I guess so. They're like, I don't want to share a desk with somebody. They're like, yeah, sorry, that's what it's going to be. And so how do you think about your space needs? And I think and that's not just office space, right? So I think in the years ahead, as we, I think we will continue to grow. I don't know at what speed, but I think we have an opportunity to lead in terms of hybrid programs, some face-to-face learning, some asynchronous online learning, some remote learning, that's Zoom, some programs that are mostly remote, but then you come together for a weekend. I mean, I think we're going to end up with all kind of new mixes. Okay, how many classrooms do you need then? What size? With what technology, right? So infrastructure is not just buildings, right? It's also what's the technology that we need. So I think we're all sort of grappling with this, like, I don't even know what we should be built, right? So I think that's the challenge, right? You're making these decisions under incredible levels of uncertainty. So the good news is, and this is going to sound funny, but it is good news. The good news is that because we're sort of underbuilt at this moment, we're not locked into a model because we have to pay off the debt on what we've built already. So I can tell you, there are universities around that, like, we've got 30,000 dorm rooms we've got to fill, so we ain't having no remote programs, right? Like, we need people in those dorm rooms because those bonds have to be paid off. And we're not in that position. So I think we're in a position of strength to actually design the university that's responsive to where students want to be, rather than what we have to do to meet our financial obligations. So I realize that wasn't a super specific answer, but that's where the thinking is.
Hi, my name's Fran Masio, and thank you for your presentation. I especially want to emphasize this outreach to the community, because the community is a laboratory we've never really used. It's been a wall, and that wall is still there, and I don't know why it's there. But as someone who's concerned about making higher education accessible to all people who want it. You may not want it, fine. But if you want it, you should be able to have access. I'm from an Italian Sicilian family. My father used to...
Are there many of those in New Jersey? I don't know.
Yes, they are. Local
It's good to know. I was just curious.
Yeah. In Leonia. Yeah. So if you need anything. However, my father used to close lights when I read, because I was going to ruin my eyes. And my friend Ella Viola just graduated. She's an alum, came from same family background. They would not let us go to school. Lovely people, lovely parents, but school was no. And it was very strong, correct? I want you to emphasize we're in the same.
Actually, my background is that I was married very young. That's what we did back then in our neighborhood. You went to high school and you got married at 18, 19, and you raised children, and that's what I did. But I always had a passion for animals, and I always wanted to go back to school. So when I was in my 30s, I went back to school, and every piece of my education has been granted. I went back through the city. We lived in New York at the time. And and I went through all the city colleges, the CUNY universities. I started at the Graduate Center for Unique Studies because I wanted to be a zoologist, and nobody had that, so I had to make my own career and my own curriculum. And I did, and someone paid for my education, which was wonderful. And no. Actually, he didn't want anyone to know it was anonymous. And so I did that, and then I got my I got a graduate degree at Staten Island College, also all paid for on grants and stuff. And then I came here. I moved to Jersey, and I came here, and I did Woodrow Wilson Foundation, and I came to the teaching foundation here. And again, it was all through Woodrow Wilson paid. So now I'm a high school teacher, and I teach biology and environmental science.
Yeah, so you're able to complete the circle there, so that's good.
Exactly. I'm giving back. I'm giving back.
The one thing I'll say, so look, obviously the financial piece is extremely important. Thank you for sharing your journey. Obviously the financial piece is important. The thing that I really learned spending a decade at ASU was that while the financial piece is important, it is necessary to address, right? Figuring out how people who don't have the means to attend a university, it is necessary but insufficient to produce student success. And the reason that's true is that there are all kinds of invisible barriers that students who are new to the university face that it's hard to appreciate for people who, like me, I always knew I was going to go to college, right? When I was growing up, it wasn't, if there was any question, it was like, I wonder what graduate degree he'll decide to get, right? Like that would have been the question, right? So I was on college campuses from when I was 5 years old. I feel completely comfortable in this environment. I wouldn't have any doubt about my belonging, right? So privilege, yeah, that's privilege. But in what way? In ways that I wouldn't necessarily appreciate until I was thinking about students who didn't have that, and I saw that experience. So a student who's the first in their family to go to college, they run into an obstacle. Maybe, they try to register for a class and somebody tells them, no, there's no room in that class. Even though there's disastrous ramifications, right? I can't get into that class. That's the prerequisite for the class I have to take in the spring. So if I can't get into the fall, then I can't take the class in the spring, and then I can't finish, and then I'm going to have to register for a whole new semester in the fall. So this is a multi-$1,000 thing that's happening when that person says, no, you can't register for that class. And so if that's me, I just say, next, I have to register for this class. Or I call somebody, or I raise hell, or whatever, right? That's what I do. But if you're not sure, right? If you're the first in your family or college is alien to you, and by the way, don't assume that just because somebody's the first in their family to go to college, that their family and their neighbors are all just like, you're great, you're going to go do it. No. A lot of times it's, who the hell do you think you are? You're no better than us. You don't belong there. That's not the place for you. And so now you run into your first barrier, and all those voices are in your head saying like, oh my God, they were right. Who am I kidding? This is a disaster. I'm out of here. That's reality. It has nothing to do with money. And so if we don't think about the design of the institution, the architecture, right, and say, how do we meet our students where they are, not where we were? All of those, what a colleague of mine called hidden prerequisites, all of those hidden prerequisites, those unseen, folk ways and the how it works kind of things, all of those things trip people up, even if they've got the scholarship, right? And so one of the things that's hard is for us, sort of the keepers of the institution, is to realize like, no, we have to change too. It's not about the students learning how to function on campus. That's part of it. Like, here's how you manage your time, and here's how you take a course. But we have to change. And so we have to think about, how do you prepare, for an interview, and how do you think about a career, and how do you think about a job? And And yeah, that's not what they did at, Williams in 1878. You're right, they didn't, because all those people didn't have to worry about those things. Like, they were going to graduate and be the upper crust whether they did well in college or not. And so they could study Virgil and not prepare for a job interview, and they were going to be fine. Okay, that's not our graduate today. So we have to change. And so but we don't know, but here's the part, like, I can't tell you exactly how we have to change. I just know we have to change. So if I knew exactly, that would be super easy. Like, we're figuring it out, right? That's why we have an EOF program, and that's why it's constantly evolving, right? Because the student needs changes. Yeah, we can clap for that. So that's the kind of institution I want us to be, the one that's figuring it out, the one that's saying it's not just about our students adapting, it's about us adapting. And that's a process, right, for us to get to that, right? Because nobody likes to change. As I've said, I'll finish with this. As I said, everybody says, they hear me talk, and they say, yes, change is what we need. We've been waiting for this. For 20 years, I've been saying we need to change. I'm all for it. Except for my stuff, that doesn't need to change. And so that's the sort of typical reaction, and I get it. But if we're going to really deliver on the sort of stuff that I'm talking about, we all need to be willing to change, to look at everything that we do and say, how do we tear it down and build it up to be successful? And so I think we can do that. I think we can do that here. I'm sure we'll try some stuff. A lot of it'll work. Some of it won't. We'll keep trying until we get it right. That's how you do it. I'm excited that you're all going to be partners in that effort, and pretty confident that we're going to do a lot of special things together. So thanks so much.